you ready?
Welcome to our Charter Road Hospitality Studios here at the Holiday Inn Express in Oxford. This is Hotty Toddy Hotline. I'm your host, Browning Stubbs. Well, we thought we would start this show off talking National Signing Day, but some breaking news did happen over the weekend, and no surprise, Ole Miss Athletics was charged with violations in 3 sports. We'll get to all of that later in the show. We'll start the show off talking about the violations, what sports these allegations are against. Then we'll get into the signing day, and that's coming up on Wednesday. That's National Signing Day, February 3rd. Ole Miss expected to have one of the top classes in the nation, and we will break down, how some of the visits went over the weekend in Oxford. We will have David Kennedy, the sports director at NewsWatch Ole Miss, will join us to talk about what we should expect from the Rebels on signing day, and then also we're going to get to some Ole Miss basketball. The Rebels, had 2 games this week, a conference game against Auburn and then a road game in the SEC Big 12 Challenge against Kansas State. We will get to those results as well. Also, the Ole Miss women's basketball team, they faced top 25 team in Missouri over the weekend. So we'll get to all that in this week's show of Hotty Toddy Hotline Big Show. So let's get it going. Turn your radio up. Keep the TV on. Here we go.
Because you want more flavor, at Nuke's we marinate and grill to perfection. Because you want the latest culinary tastes and trends, we never rest. At Nuke's, great food drives us. So we are meticulous in our preparation, obsessed with the quality of our ingredients, and uncompromising about serving you our very best. We believe that sharing a memorable meal is one of life's ultimate pleasures. Join us at Nuke's Eatery.
Welcome back in the Hotty Toddy Hotline. I said in the open, we are going to start with the allegations against Ole Miss, but basically last week, Ole Miss, they received a notice of allegations from the NCAA charging the school with rules violations in football, women's basketball, and track and field. But the good news is that these are just minor penalties when it comes to football. The other sports, such as women's basketball, that there was a report by Yahoo, and basically 90% of these penalties were charged against women's basketball under former coach, before Matt Insel took over, Adrian Wiggins, as Wiggins and 2 of his assistants were fired after a school investigation found academic and recruiting misconduct. 2 of those players were ruled ineligible, and Ole Miss self-imposed a 1-year postseason ban. That was before Matt Insel was the head coach, but so not clear as to what's going to happen with Matt Insel and Ole Miss women's basketball, but it seems like most of the penalties are going to be against them. Track and field, again, this was kind of stuff in the past. We're not really sure at Hotty Toddy Hotline what's going to happen there. But with football, what we do know is that all of these allegations are coming pre-Hugh Freeze. And these allegations connected to the Ole Miss football program from 2008 to 2011 under the tenure of Houston Nutt. So, again, this is really not affecting Hugh Freeze that much, but part of the allegations are the Laramie Tunsil situation when he was suspended for 7 games for improper benefits. He received a loaner vehicle and hotel room, stuff like that. But, Ole Miss did, self-impose that ban on Laramie Tunsil. But a source told the Associated Press that Ole Miss has already taken some steps, such as reducing recruiting official visits to try to mitigate any punishment from the NCAA. The timing of the notice of allegations is anything but ideal for the Rebels. National Signing Day is coming up on Wednesday, and Ole Miss, did host a lot of the recruits over the weekend as they try to keep a top 3 recruiting class Ross Bjork, athletic director of Ole Miss, did send out a statement that said, as has been the case for the past 3 years, we are bound by confidentiality and cannot comment publicly on the matter. However, I can say that I am confident in how our coaches and staff operate our program, and we take compliance NCAA and SEC rules very seriously. We are working hard to seek a resolution to this matter. So, just an outsider speaking, you might get a loss of maybe 3 scholarships per year, which might not seem like a lot, but when you're trying to recruit a deep class like Ole Miss is this year, it kind of is a big deal. I might have to add that. But, this is nothing to be scared of. I really don't see this impacting Ole Miss in National Signing Day this week, mainly because, they're ranked 3rd and everyone came in over the weekend. And all these allegations mainly happened before Hugh Freeze was here. They know Hugh Freeze does things the right way, and I just don't think there's a whole lot to worry about when it comes to any possible allegations against the Ole Miss Rebels. I mean, at worst, a few scholarships should be gone, but I wouldn't expect any postseason ban or any wins taken away from the past because of it. Now, if Ole Miss didn't, suspend Laramie Tunsil, or not suspend but hold him out, then maybe there could have been some type of penalty, but Ole Miss did the right thing. They cooperated with the NCAA, and it seems like this is not going to be a big deal. Let us know what you think about the allegations. If you have any information, please let us know. You can contact us on Twitter at Hotty Toddy Hotline. Like us on Facebook at Hotty Toddy Hotline, and we will be happy to talk to you guys and conversate about what to make about these allegations. I mean, obviously, this is not a surprise. We've heard rumblings about this in the past, but basically, there's a total of 30 violations that were sent to Ole Miss, and Ole Miss, they will have 90 days to respond to the allegations unless there is agreement on the facts, and the case can be resolved by summary disposition. A committee on infractions hearing day will be established. And, we said that women's basketball was the main part of it. I mean, we are huge fans of the Ole Miss women's basketball team. Hopefully things will go okay there, but, again, they already sat out for the postseason. I believe it was back in 2012. So, I mean, you hope that there's not going to be any more trouble towards Matt Insel and his team, because Matt Insel is doing things the right way. Track and field, they are as well. I mean, all of this is stuff in the past. As Ole Miss fans, we're just hoping that this isn't going to affect any postseason, because the football team's great, track and field's great. Women's basketball is up and coming. You just don't want to see, any postseason bans. I mean, you might lose a few scholarships, but hey, that's better than not being able to participate and win championships. All right, well, that wraps up our discussion on the allegations. I will ask David Kennedy from NewsWatch, Ole Miss, the sports director there. He'll give us his opinion on that, and then we'll also get into National Signing Day with David as well, and that will be coming up after this next segment, where I'm going to talk about Ole Miss basketball and how they did over the weekend. 2 games, they had a game against Auburn and Kansas State, so we'll get to all that coming up on Hotty Toddy Hotline. Welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline. Before we get to the basketball conversation, we want to talk about where we are broadcasting this show every week, and we are a part of I want to thank Charter Road Hospitality. We're located, there's 4 beautiful properties in Oxford, 2 Hampton Inns, a Town Place Suites, and then right here at the Holiday Inn Express. It's a great place if you want to come to the Pavilion at Ole Miss, that would be great. They're located at 112 Heritage Drive, right by the Huddle House on Jackson Avenue. If you want to call them, they are 662-236-2500. And also, like I said, the Hampton Inn is also right here in Oxford. You can contact them, 662-232-2442. And Town Place Suites is also in Oxford, one of the newer properties. They have an indoor pool there and everything. Call them 662-238-3522. And then lastly, the other Hampton Inn in Oxford, that is at 103 Ed Perry Boulevard, 662-234-5565. So let's get to Ole Miss basketball. The Ole Miss Rebels took on the Auburn Tigers. That one was last Wednesday, and it was a really good performance from Ole Miss. They got back Stephon Moody, returned from his hamstring injury. So did Martavius Newby, and it was a fantastic game. It was, first half where Moody, was still trying to get loose and everything, but he responded. Had his 14th straight game of scoring 20 or more points. Moody finished the game with 24 points, 3 rebounds, 5 assists, and 1 steal. Ole Miss trailed at the end of the first half, 30-29. But the second half, just 5 points scored in the first half by Moody. Second half, Moody had 5 3-pointers. And, it wasn't just him doing work. It was Marcanvis Hyman off the bench, came in and scored 19 points, grabbed 10 rebounds. That was his first career double-double. Those were the only double-figure scorers for the Rebels. Tomas Giello had 7 points, and Rasheed Brooks added 8 points. It was a good conference win. With that win, Ole Miss improved to 3-5 in the SEC, but then, of course, they had to go on the road, and some of the quotes before the game were, it was good to have Batman back, it was good to have Moody back in the lineup, but Moody did not look himself in the game against Kansas State. First half was a really close game, 38-36. Kansas State outscored Ole Miss, but then in the second half, Kansas State just went on a huge run in that one, and this was a Kansas State team that I thought could cause Ole Miss trouble, and they were so good defensively in the second half. Moody didn't attempt a shot in the second half at all, and Kansas State's DJ Johnson scored 8 of his 14 points during a 19-2 run in the second half. Kansas State did go on a 19-2 run, and that was a 17-point swing spanning 6 minutes. And they had an 18-point lead, 63-45, with about 7.5 minutes left, and that basically that was the deciding factor in that one. During that run, that 17-2 run, Ole Miss just shot 2 of 14 from the field, and didn't score for about 4 minutes. So it was really a disappointing game for the Rebels. We saw Ole Miss. Stephon Moody got nothing. You got to have him going. Ole Miss was led by Anthony Perez, who scored 13 points in this basketball game. Ole Miss is now 0-2 against Kansas State in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Moody had led the Rebels in scoring in 19 of 20 games before the game on Saturday. Looking ahead for the Ole Miss Rebels, though, they are going to try to get back on the winning track against the worst team in the SEC. That's Mizzou. They'll be at Missouri on Wednesday at 7 p.m. That one will be on SEC Network. And then they return home against Vanderbilt on Saturday at 7 p.m. I mean, it's not looking good for Ole Miss and their RPI as far as them trying to get into the NCAA tournament. This is not the season that they expected. They sit at 13-8, 3-5 in conference. They are ninth in the SEC, which is where they were projected before the season. Still some winnable games ahead against Missouri and Vanderbilt, but you got to go on the road and beat Florida and Texas A&M. I mean, if you're really going to have a shot at making it to the NCAA tournament, and it stinks having Sebastian Saez out, but with eye injuries, they're just really weird, as Andy Kennedy said, and they're really unpredictable on when he's going to return. He's been wearing an eye patch on the bench. People have been calling him a pirate, but hopefully he'll be back for, if not Missouri, Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt did go into Ole Miss building and beat them last year. So hopefully Ole Miss can get back on the winning track. Really, they're 3-5 in conference. I think they can only afford one more loss. I think if you finish 10-6 in conference, that should be good enough to get in to the tournament. But if you screw around and lose a couple, then you got to do work in the SEC tournament, and that's a lot to ask for. So Ole Miss is on the clock. All right, well, coming up next, David Kennedy of NewsWatch Ole Miss. He's going to talk some about the allegations and National Signing Day coming up on Wednesday. So stay tuned. We'll be right back with David.
Hey, Rebels, your truck is here. Allen Samuels Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Oxford presents the all-new Ram Rebel. It's Ram, the Rebel way. Send an unmistakable signal. Rebel 24/7. Ram Rebel from your friend in the car business. Allen Samuels Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram in Oxford.
Come by, let's be friends.
Welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline, and now joined on the phone by David Kennedy of NewsWatch Ole Miss. He's the sports director over there. David, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good, man. What was feeling pretty good, Friday when we were doing our show, we had some, a good plan for signing day. And then the breaking news hit about the allegations against Ole Miss, involving 3 different sports. What were your thoughts when you read the report by Yahoo?
Well, when I read the report, most of these allegations are against the Ole Miss women's basketball team, and then there's some for track, and then I believe there was about, I think it was 7 or 8 against the football team, and most of them were from the Houston Nutt era, and then a couple, stem from the Laramie Tunsil incident before the season. I think for football, they're just going to get a little slap on the wrist, but I'm not really sure what the women's basketball team did, but, they might see some serious penalties.
And, we'll stick with the football part because, signing day is coming up this Wednesday. Do you see these allegations having any effect on any recruits that might sign?
I don't think so. From what I've heard, the recruits all had a great recruiting weekend this past weekend. I think that it's not going to affect that much, and I think this was actually the perfect opportunity for it to happen the day before or the day of starting of the recruiting visit, because Hugh Freeze could address it and tell all these top recruits that, hey, this is what happened, here are the facts, this is what we think is going to happen. And so it was actually, if it had come out today instead of on Friday, it would look, a lot worse heading into the National Signing Day.
Yeah, and David, I think that's a very good point, because, if the letter came out today, then, it's almost like the recruits are like, oh my God, like, wow, I can't believe this. But, but since Freeze was able to address them privately and tell them the truth that all this happened in the past, I think I'm kind of with you there that it's not going to have any impact. But yeah, overall, you just said that the recruits had a very good weekend. So if you'll tell us all at Hotty Toddy Hotline, who can you confirm that was here, and is there any news that you can update us on?
Well, Devon Penniman was here over the weekend, and he's been a huge question mark ever since his visit to Tuscaloosa. He had a great visit with Nick Saban. He was posting pictures on Twitter with him, and he didn't officially decommit from the Rebels, but from what, you go read all the articles on him and just, the blogs and what you see on Twitter from him, it's almost as if he has decommitted, but in a soft way. But, he hasn't made that public. I think, after this recruiting weekend, he had a great time. He got to hang out with Gregory Little, Shea Patterson, a couple great offensive weapons that are going to really utilize him in the future. The only problem is at Alabama, they're losing, a Heisman Trophy winning running back, and, they only have one running back in this class. Ole Miss already has two running backs in this class. Now, I think both of those guys might be switching positions. Connor from North Panola, I could really see him going to the secondary. And then Truitt from Alabama, you watch his tape, he looks like a wide receiver. I mean, even the beginning of his highlight tape is of him catching balls. But still, he could see the opportunity of immediately seeing the field. And to be quite honest, I think he's the best running back that Hugh Freeze has recruited, since the start of his tenure here. And he was a big priority for Hugh Freeze and all of them to make sure that, he still bought into what Ole Miss is all about and where they're going in the future. A.J. Brown, from what I've heard, had a great visit too. He got to hang out with DK Metcalf and Shea Patterson. He's a bigger question mark than Devon. I don't think he's going to Mississippi State. I think it's down between us and Alabama. If you look at it, we have a better quarterback situation here than Alabama does going in the future. And we pass the ball more. They run the ball more. Now, I'm not saying you can't, be a first-round pick from Alabama, because obviously you can be a first-round wide receiver at Alabama, but the situation quarterback-wise is better here for him. Now, the depth here, I think for the first time in a long time, Ole Miss has better wide receiver depth. We may be losing Cody Core and Laquan Treadwell, but we also have, Quincy Adebayo coming back. We have, Damare Stringfellow, and then you have DeMarcus Lodge and Van Jefferson waiting in the wings, along with DK Metcalf committed in this class. So if he wants to see the field as a true freshman, Ole Miss is not the school for him. So, yeah, I think those are the two biggest guys that Ole Miss was really, going after this weekend, and it'll be interesting to see who they sign with. Devon Penniman is actually set today to decide his commitment.
David, I want to ask you about some of these coaches, or excuse me, not coaches, but players, and how they flirt with other schools. Because we saw on Twitter, A.J. Brown posted a photo of him in an Ole Miss jersey, and then you talked about Devon Penniman posting photos of him and Nick Saban when he's already recruited to Ole Miss. Why do players try to flirt with other teams on social media?
Well, I think, they like attention. They're 17, 18-year-old kids, and they're really just being brought up. You have random people following them on Twitter, tweeting at them. You're, the big man on campus in high school. People come, travel to see some of these guys' games. When I was covering, the Oxford games, you would see just random people stopping by who aren't even from Oxford, coming in on a home Ole Miss weekend game just to see DK Metcalf play. And, also they may be committed to the school, but they also just want to, experience the recruitment. I mean, it's like fraternity rush in a way. You may know you want to go to one place, but you want to check out all the other houses. And that's what these guys like to do. And, even if you're a rock-solid, hard commit to one school and Nick Saban wants to come and just try to sell a pitch to you, you're going to let him come talk to you. I mean, the man is 5 national championships. And just out of respect, and plus it's pretty cool to just post a picture on Twitter. So I really think it's just an attention thing for a lot of these 17 and 18-year-old kids.
David, I do want to talk more about A.J. Brown and Devon Penniman, but I want to know your quick analysis on Knoxville County's Jeffrey Simmons. Do you see him favoring Ole Miss? Because I know he has a lot of schools that he might pull a hat from.
Well, he's everybody that I've talked to thinks he's coming to Ole Miss. But he's done a very good job about keeping quiet on Twitter. I mean, if you try to follow him on Twitter, it's actually locked. You have to wait for a follow request, and he hasn't accepted my follow request yet either. So, I mean, he's been relatively quiet, but I could see him coming to Ole Miss. He's enjoyed his visits. He has a lot of guys here. Benito Jones actually hosted him Saturday, and they had a great time. Ultimately, it goes back to he could go to Alabama or Mississippi State. And those schools are kind of like, need to reload a defensive line. Ole Miss, another position that maybe for the first time, has a lot of great depth coming back despite the departure of Robert Kondichi. And he may get more playing time going to other schools, but I don't think that's his top priority. I think he's willing to wait a year or two and learn in the ropes because he knows how good the coaches have done of bringing up defensive linemen and developing them. But I think he does sign with Ole Miss on Wednesday.
Back to Penniman and Brown. You said it. Treadwell's gone, Cody Core's gone, but a lot of depth at that receiver position. And then guys that didn't really play a lot last year in Van Jefferson, DK Metcalf coming in as well. So there are a lot of wide receivers, but at the running back spot, you're dealing Akeem Judd, Jordan Wilkins, Eugene Brasley. Not a whole lot of competition there. I mean, overall, what need do you see for Ole Miss? Is it more of trying to get a guy like Penniman or one of the best receivers in the country in A.J. Brown?
This is hard. If I had to pick between A.J. Brown or Devon Penniman, I've gone on record and said this before. A.J. Brown is the most underrated recruit in the entire country. The guy can block. The guy can catch. He's a deep threat. He can do it all. He's physical. He's a good kid. I want him really bad. But Hugh Freeze has something special in Devon Penniman too. And we can't lose a running back to Alabama because when Alabama knows a running back is going to be good, they're generally pretty good. And I think Devon Penniman comes on campus. And if he wants early playing time, he's going to get 50, 60 carries. I think as a freshman, he's going to be the number 2 to Akeem Judd. I still think Jordan Wilkins will have a big role next year in the offense, but I think Devon Penniman, you watch his highlights, and you see him just burst through. And, it's all about the yards after hit, not the yards in total. And he would get hit, at the 3rd or 2 yards right after the line of scrimmage, and then he's gone. And he played great competition. This guy is something special, and I think I would pick him just because we haven't had a stud running back really come in Hugh Freeze's tenure, unless you count Sweeney, who's already dealing with injury problems. And that's not good during, the beginning of your career in college as a running back.
So, but before we go to break, what are the odds that both Brown and Penniman are wearing the red and blue on Wednesday?
Both?
Yes.
I'm going to go, I'm not, I'm in a statistics class right now, but I think it's a 40% chance both of them commit to Ole Miss on signing day. I don't think either of them, one committing doesn't mean the other would want to come to Ole Miss since they play different positions. But I'd give a 40% chance we end up with both. I'd still say 75% Devon Penniman, Ole Miss, and 25% Alabama. And then I'm completely split on A.J. Brown. So maybe my statistics aren't right. My 40% guess is right there. But that's how I feel about it.
All right, we're going to stay on the phone with David to talk some Ole Miss basketball when Hotty Toddy Hotline returns. Welcome back to Hotty Toddy Hotline with David Kennedy, sports director at NewsWatch Ole Miss. David, the Ole Miss basketball team, seemed like they were getting back on the right track, snapping that 4-game losing streak against Auburn. But then, they go to Kansas State and then kind of lay an egg. I mean, the bench did good to fight back late in that second half, but ultimately they fell 69-64. I mean, I feel like this is kind of a weird year. You got Stephon Moody as one of the top scorers in the country, 24 points per game, yet it seems like Ole Miss is not doing as well. And I don't know. I mean, obviously some front court depth was lost from last season. The shooting of Ladarius White is also hurting this team. I mean, what are some things outside of some of the injury problems that are hurting Ole Miss?
Well, to start, I was a big Thomas Jello, supporter coming into the season. I thought this guy was going to be, a real breakout performer for the Rebels, and he's done okay, but he's not been that star that we needed, and that's sort of been the theme as far as depth goes for the entire team. Moody is great. Moody is, one of the best Ole Miss basketball players to come through. And, we're very appreciative for that, but we just haven't had the depth for this season. Going to the Kansas State game, I remember on Rebel Watch, Kelsey Davis saying, it's not whether they're going to win or lose, it's whether how much they're going to lose by Friday. And, they kept it close and they fought hard, but, they really got to be winning, start winning these games no matter who the opponent is. I think as of right now, this team is not a tournament team. Now, however, if everyone is 100% healthy on the club, I think, they really start getting their groove going right before the tournament, the SEC tournament. They could do something special in the tournament, but obviously the only way they're going to go to the tournament at this point is if they win the SEC championship.
David, this team, it seems like Andy Kennedy, in the past, he relies on a transfer player to be the best player. We saw that with Marshall Henderson. Now we've seen that with Stephon Moody. But with next year, it seems like Ole Miss is not going to get that high-quality type of scorer, but instead might find that best player within his own team. Guys like Marcanvas Hyman, Dante Fitzpatrick, Dorsey, and then even the transfer Rasheed Brooks is having overall good season. I mean, is it kind of encouraging that at least Andy Kennedy is developing some of these young players like Hyman and Dorsey?
Well, it's always encouraging that it's, no matter what program it is, everyone's being developed. And it's whether the speed and how effective the development is being compared to the other teams in the SEC. Now, we all know the SEC necessarily isn't the greatest college basketball conference in the country. But, you look at all these other teams, and they're developing, they're getting better too. And, ultimately, it's not necessarily the development is the best thing that is going for the Rebels right now. It's, they just built this whole new complex. The pavilion is what's going to drive in recruits for the Ole Miss basketball team. That's what they're going to have to really sell their point on, is start, getting these big-time recruits throughout the state of Mississippi. Oftentimes, you'll have some of the best, college basketball or some great prospects in the state, but they don't end up going to Ole Miss. They end up going to other schools. And so what it's going to really be is, how, what recruits think of the new facilities Ole Miss has to offer.
Andy Kennedy, the most winningest coach in Ole Miss history. He's from Mississippi. But again, his recruiting record has been very shaky. And, you really can't judge him for trying to get kids to come to the Tad Pad. I mean, I think any coach would struggle with that. But now you got this building, and, you're kind of having a lackluster season. I mean, would you say that, starting next season his seat could be getting hot if he's not getting good recruits in?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that, because you can't use poor facilities as an excuse anymore. You have all of the tools to make it now. You're going to have guys like, you've had guys sort of break through the past few years who everybody, whether Ole Miss makes the tournament or not this year, a lot of these college basketball recruits are like, oh yeah, Moody. He was, Stephon Moody. He was a great basketball player. He went to Ole Miss. And then, of course, Marshall Henderson, everyone knows who he is. So Ole Miss basketball does have a sense of, they are on the map. They aren't the biggest, thing coming on the map when you look at it, but they're there and they exist and everyone knows who they are, especially with other sports being successful. But, if he doesn't start recruiting and getting some really good recruits, because we all know he's good strategy, he might be the hardest working coach, in Ole Miss sports, counting that I believe he's the longest tenured coach that's been here. But recruiting is definitely a big part of it. And if he doesn't start bringing in big recruits and we start having, a losing record in the pavilion, his seat should be hot.
Well, their schedule, is kind of tough once you get past Missouri and Vanderbilt. You said earlier that the time is now if this team is going to make a run. But, their RPI is so low at 96. They didn't they almost had a top 25 RPI win over South Carolina, and they really don't have a lot of top 50 wins. So, how many more losses, can this team afford? I mean, honestly, I'm saying 1, 2 at most.
None, absolutely none. But I mean, I don't think they're an NCAA berth team right now. I'm not even sure if they are one if they win out completely. They're going to have to go into the NCAA tournament and, the SEC tournament and dominate and do well. Maybe if they win out and they lose the SEC championship, I could see them being considered. But there's, not much room for error the rest of the way through.
David, want to thank you so much for coming on Hotty Toddy Hotline, and we're gonna check on Wednesday to see if you're right about Penniman and AJ Brown. But anyway, man, thanks for coming on the show this week.
Good, no problem. Appreciate it.
David Kennedy at NewsWatch Ole Miss. Follow him on Twitter at DavidMJKennedy or at Rebel_Watch. All right, coming up, we'll get to more Ole Miss sports, women's basketball. They played over the weekend, and we'll talk more about that when Hotty Toddy Hotline returns.
Because you want more flavor, at Nukes we marinate and grill to perfection. Because you want the latest culinary tastes and trends, we never rest. At Nukes, great food drives us. So we are meticulous in our preparation, obsessed with the quality of our ingredients, and uncompromising about serving you our very best. We believe that sharing a memorable meal is one of life's ultimate pleasures. Join us at Nukes Eatery.
Welcome back into Hotty Toddy Hotline. I want to thank David Kennedy for coming on the show to talk Ole Miss recruiting, the allegations, and basketball. Now we want to get to Ole Miss women's basketball as Matt Ensel and the Lady Rebels were in action against Missouri over the weekend, the number 22 ranked Tigers. And, we thought Ole Miss was, going to be making a run. They just beat Kentucky the week before. But, Ole Miss, they did lose this past Thursday to number 2 South Carolina, 81-62, but it was a very competitive game. A game against Missouri, a very winnable game on Matt Ensel bobblehead night. They were tied 16 at the end of the first quarter, but then the second quarter was really flat out ugly, I have to say, because in that quarter we saw Missouri score 4 points and Ole Miss score 3 points. Don't know how that happened, but it did. And then the third quarter, Missouri outscores Ole Miss 25-15, and then the fourth quarter 17-12. So it was a tough game. We saw Cindrika Sessom and Queen Hayes led the Rebels in scoring with 15 points, and they just didn't get it done. Tori Lewis struggled from 3-point land, 1 for 8 for her. The Ole Miss women's basketball team, they are back in action with another tough game as they take on Alabama. That one's Thursday night at Alabama at 6 p.m. on SEC Network Plus. And so now they're 10-11, 2-6 in conference play. Basketball, we talked about their upcoming week. I'll remind you guys, Wednesday night they play at Missouri on SEC Network at 8 p.m. And then they return Saturday for a matchup against Vanderbilt on ESPNU at 7 o'clock at the Pavilion. Signing day, Wednesday. Make sure you're following Hotty Toddy Hotline on Facebook and Twitter for updates, and we'll find out where Ole Miss ranks in this class. So right now they're ranked 3rd. Hopefully they can stay in the top 3, top 5 at worst, because we're going to have a great class coming to Oxford, and it's going to be pretty good. And then baseball, of course, over the weekend, it was on Friday. They had their first inter-squad scrimmage of 2016. The team was divided by red and blue, and the red team won 4-1, led by a 2-run homer by Colby Bortles. Oh, and then I meant to add one thing about A.J. Brown. We were talking about recruiting. He has interest in playing baseball, and he actually met with Mike Bianco, the Ole Miss baseball coach, to talk about possibly playing for the Rebels. So that might have had some type of influence on his recruiting. So we want to thank Mike Bianco for talking to A.J. Brown about that. And then again, we want to thank Charter Road Hospitality for sponsoring this show. 2 Hampton Inn locations in Oxford, the Town Place Suites, and then of course right here, 112 Heritage Drive, at Holiday Inn Express. So come here at Charter Road Hospitality if you want to stay in Oxford for a trip to the Pavilion or a baseball game in the spring, or if you're coming for double-decker. I would get your reservations pretty early. Well, that pretty much wraps up this week's show, but we did talk with David Kennedy of NewsWatch Ole Miss. He gave some great insight on signing day, the allegations, and Ole Miss basketball. So we will be checking the recruiting boards on Wednesday. It's a big day. The quarterback club will meet early, 7:30 in the morning, and there's going to be some Oxford high school kids, Lafayette high school kids. Eli Johnson, son of David Johnson, will be signing with Ole Miss. DK Metcalf, son of Terrence Metcalf, will be signing at Ole Miss. So it'll be a great day in Oxford. Well, my name's Browning Stubbs. Our executive producer is John Rawl. You've been listening to Hotty Toddy Hotline, a production of CRM Sports on the Colonel Reb Radio Network. We'll see you next week.